Well, good morning, Calvary Chapel. Glad to see so many people here, smiley faces after Christmas. Hope you all had a good time with your families. Um, I was talking to Pastor Randy earlier, and I know that you guys are going through the Gospel of John, and so I thought I'd take another slice at it from a slightly different angle, and this would be a topical study on the Book of Signs. So in the Gospel of John, it's kind of laid out as there's a short section of prologue. There's a book of signs which runs from chapter 1 through chapter 12. Then there's the more familiar, the Passion, and then there's the epilogue. But I was going to focus today on the book of signs because if you think about your own life, probably the most prominent sign would be something that spoke to you just before you got saved. I'm always asking, I teach at a recovery home for men in San Antonio, and I'm always curious, like, what is the last straw that brings someone into the recovery home, or even how they find us? And most often, it's a pretty powerful sign. I was thinking about one man who he had gotten shot, and he went to the hospital, and they were able to patch him up. And he wanted to thank the doctor who had operated on him. And so he asked if he could see her, and she came in, and he thanked her, and she said, "Well, you don't have to thank me." She goes, "God must have done it because that bullet." So when they looked at the MRI, well, like just think of this as the back of his spinal cord and some very critical arteries and so forth. That bullet came in, did a 180 around that, and then exited. So that's a pretty powerful sign, right? A sign of God's hand on your life. And so, but Jesus was using these signs both for physical and for spiritual authentication of who he was. And so, in John chapter 1, it talks about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that really got the attention of a lot of people, a lot of different people, in just that one statement. I mean, it spoke to the Jews because they were thinking about Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. It was speaking to the Greeks because they were looking for this underlying principle. I guess in today's culture, you'd say the force, the force be with you and all of that. But they're looking for this underlying principle of the force, in a sense. And Jesus is identifying as the Word, is identified as the Word. It also was speaking to the Gnostics and the people that believed in multiplicity of gods. And so in that one section, John gets everybody's attention. And, it's in the purpose of John, the whole gospel is spoken of much later in John 20, verse 30 and 31. And many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name. So that's the purpose. Those are the words of God, and he's using signs as, you'd say, milestones to salvation. So when we think about the Gospel of John in general, it's different from the other three. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called synoptic Gospels, and they're the events in the synoptics that John doesn't. There's things that John doesn't talk about, but there are also things that are unique to John that are like the water to wine, the Samaritan woman, and Lazarus. John has long discourses. And the chronology is very different. Like John is like it's more of a theological portrait of Jesus. And all of the events in John are not in time sequence. They're like Matthew, Mark, and Luke are all laid out in sequence and in time. But John is writing to convey a theological portrait of Jesus. And so if we go to, let's see, there was one more thing I wanted to, oh yeah, and the other thing was, so in the other books of John, some of the other books that John had written, we think about Revelation, the revelation of Jesus Christ. This is out of Revelation 1, which he gave to him to show his servants these things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it. There's that word, that terminology of signs again, signified it by an angel to his servant John. 1 John 1 says, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have beheld the word of life. So, whereas Jesus might often refer to works, John talks about them as signs. So again, we can have something, I know you probably had an experience where even an unsaved person can say something, and you just know that was from God. Like there was, because it resonates with you at some level. Or maybe you just, you see some graffiti, or I don't know, whatever it might be, something pops up in your life that might not mean anything to anybody else, but it's very powerful to them. So like that man that got the bullet, those hospitals probably have 1 million people going through, and a lot of them are gunshots, but not a lot of them are signs like it was to that one man. So let's go through some of those signs, and let's start with the first sign. So that's John 1, 1 through 11. We'll start with that. Oh, I wanted to read that, but that's not the first sign. It's just that it sets more of the tone for the gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. To him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness to that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them he gave the power to become the sons of God, even to them, that believe in his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, and the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake, and that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of the fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. No man has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. So there's this persistent pointing of the Savior. So here's here's a pointing to the Savior, and he's going to use calibrations of these signs to identify himself as the Messiah. Because we're warned other places in the Scripture that we're to test everything, and Jesus was no exception. John the Baptist was in prison, and he sent his followers to Jesus to say, "Hey, are you really the Messiah?" I'm just thinking like inside that, if I was John, I'm in prison. It's like, if Jesus is the Messiah, I probably shouldn't be in prison. Maybe he can get me out of here, or, and they ask him, are you the Messiah? And he says, he doesn't say, "Yeah, I'm the Messiah," because he wants them to test the signs against the prophecies of the Old Testament, is what they had at the time. And so tell John the things that you have seen. The deaf hear, the blind see, the dead are raised, right? So that those signs in and of themselves calibrate who the Messiah is. I wanted to go next to, let's see, sorry, I took so many stabs at this. I've taught this, this material a number of times, and it's really one of my favorite topics. And God just showed me a lot of new stuff as I was preparing for this one. And so when we think about the first sign, it's going to be the water to wine, the wedding. And the significance, when we talked about signs that might have spoken to us immediately, there's other signs that might take a long time to catch up, right? Like for example, there's a place where Jesus tells his disciples, he's talking about, hey, tear this temple down, and in 3 days it'll be rebuilt. Well, it's like, hey, this thing took decades to build. You're going to rebuild it in 3 days? But he just let it sit there because it wasn't going to make sense to the disciples until after he had raised from the dead after 3 days. So we got this water to wine thing that it's interesting that it starts the signs with that, because what would happen later on is, of course, wine would be the symbol Jesus used for his blood, and also the symbolism of the wedding. Think about the wedding feast of the Lamb that would occur later on for those of us who believe in Jesus Christ. So let's go ahead and turn to John chapter 2, and we're going to be in verses 1 through 11. And the third day, there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee. The mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, in other words, they were out of wine, or they were running low, the mother of Jesus saith unto him, They have no wine. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. And by the way, this water was for cleansing. It wasn't really even for drinking. People were washing with it, right? And Jesus said unto them, Fill the water pots with water, and they filled them up to the brim. And he saith unto them, Draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bear it. When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, he knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew. The governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and saith unto him, Every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, and when man have well drunk, then that which is worse. But thou hast kept the good wine until now. The beginning of the miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. So that reiterates that purpose of these signs. They believed on him now. There's tangible actions. There are there's power behind the words, right? And so um, that's another, so again, that's believing in these signs, or so that we might believe Jesus is the Christ. If we go to, so if we think about that sign as kind of the opening and kind of a shadow of communion, the shadow of the blood of salvation, we go next to a miracle of the nobleman's son, a healing of the nobleman's son. But before we go there, I just wanted to point out that that sign, that these signs might not mean anything to anybody else, right? But these signs uniquely spoke to the people that were observing them. So the sign that you are to the people around you speaks very loudly to your Savior, because people are the gospel is foolishness to those that are perishing, right? But Jesus working through you and emanating through you and speaking through you is a very powerful testimony to what's happened in you and how he wants to use you to continue the signs in your life. So, for example, I mean, people that knew you before you got saved are probably still pretty astonished that you're still on this track that you're on. You know, it's kind of hard for them to look at that contrast in your life and say, well, yeah, but I knew you like when you did this, this, and this. And I don't get it. I don't get it, right? But that's a powerful sign to the world around us. Let's take a look at the nobleman's son, John chapter 4. And we'll be in verses 46 to 54. So Jesus came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went unto him and besought him, and that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said unto him, except ye see signs and wonders, you will not believe. I was thinking too, like even, so sometimes signs are powerful messages to certain people, but not others. And I remembered when, so the rich man and Lazarus, they were separated after death by this great abyss, and the rich man was suffering in torment. He was thirsting greatly, and he asked Lazarus, or he said, Father Abraham, send Lazarus over that he might put water on my tongue. And Abraham says, no, we can't go over there, and you can't come over here. And then he said, well, let me go back and at least warn my brothers. And he was told, well, even if they would see someone raised from the dead, they would not believe, right? So as powerful a sign as the resurrection was and is, still some people don't believe it. Or if they believe it, it's only an intellectual mindset and not a heartfelt transformation. Except you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. The nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down here, my child die. Jesus saith unto him, Go thy way, thy son liveth. And the man believed the word that Jesus had spoken unto him, and he went his way. And as he was going down, his servants met him and told him, saying, Thy son liveth. Then inquired he of them the hour when he began to amend. And they said unto him, Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him. So the father knew that it was at that same hour in the which Jesus said unto him, Thy son liveth, and himself believed, and his whole house. This is again the second sign that Jesus did when he was come out of Judea unto Galilee. And I was thinking, unless we got that marker here, it would be hard to, I guess when I was thinking about the woman at the well, I thought, well, that's a pretty powerful sign. But for whatever reason, that's not classified as a sign. It was a powerful sign to that one woman, right? But this is called the second sign. So the water to wine was the first sign. Then it jumps to the nobleman's son. But in the middle there, you had the woman at the well, and Jesus is ministering to her personally. So he has some personal signs, but others are more public, and they become public. I mean, certainly this was a miraculous sign, and a lot of people got wind of it. And the woman at the well, it touched her deeply, and she was transformed, and then started telling others about Jesus. But this was for whatever reason, that wasn't classified as a miracle or a sign. It was a personal interaction, I would say. But if we go now to the next sign, the pool of Bethesda, let's go to John 5, and we'll be in verses 1 through 15. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethsaida, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whatsoever then first appeared at the troubling of the water, stepped in, was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And a certain man was there, which had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? Now look so he doesn't get really who he's talking to clearly, because now he's like going in. He's not even going to answer the question. He's going to tell him, well, the stuff I've been trying, here's why it hasn't been working. So the impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. But when I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus saith unto him, Rise, take up thy bed, and walk. And immediately the man was made whole, and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. The Jews therefore said unto him that was cured, It is the Sabbath day. It is not lawful for thee to carry thy bed. He answered them, He that made me whole, the same said unto me, Take up thy bed and walk. So, you got all these rebuttals. So again, thinking about signs don't always speak to everybody. They speak to certain people. Like, the Jews, they completely missed it. Like, it's like, hey, this guy has been paralyzed for all these years, and you're quibbling about the Sabbath. And by the way, Jesus was not sinning in any ways. The Jews had put these different layers. I guess you could call them well-intentioned maybe, but they were really religious additions to the law and to the scriptures. And it was the violations of those laws that they were pointing to. But Jesus led a perfect, sinless life. But they're accusing him of infractions in this case, on the Sabbath day. And you think about the ultra-Orthodox Jews today. They consider it even a work to press an elevator button on the Sabbath. They'll have to have if they stay somewhere, they'll have to have a Gentile push the elevator button, because they would consider that works on the Sabbath. They don't want to violate that. So anyway, this man gets up and walks. He's been in that condition 38 years, and now he can walk. That was a powerful sign to a lot of people that had known him for 38 years especially. And we'll find that theme arise in a little bit again around healing. But the next sign is actually the only sign that's in all four Gospels. And this is the Jesus feeding the 5,000. So let's go to John chapter 6. And we'll be in verses 5 to 14. When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, Whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 pennies worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said unto him, There is a lad here, which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? And Jesus said, Make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down. And likewise of the fishes as much as they would. When they were filled, he said unto his disciples, Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, This is of truth, that the prophet should come into the world. So again, this is a calibration again, like, hey, this, anybody can say that they are the Messiah. And there was many false messiahs that rose, but they better come with the same signs and miracles that the Old Testament prophesied. And they better have a sinless life. When Jesus therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. There was, there was another miracle. It was the, so Matthew, we'll just take a quick detour. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Matthew 9, verses 1 through 8. Because there's another powerful message embedded in these signs that we often can miss. And that's the linkage between an abundant life in this life and salvation in the way that we normally think about it. So in other words, we would say, when I got saved, that was my avenue to be with the Lord in eternity and go to heaven. But saved in another sense, when you look up, if you did a word study on most of the saved in the New Testament, most of the Greek word studies, it means saved like we think about it, but it also means delivered, healed, abundant life, and in many other, benefits of salvation. And that's illustrated here, and it's also illustrated in the signs that we've been going through. So here is Jesus, and he entered into a ship and passed over and came into his own city. And behold, they brought to him a sick man of the palsy laying on the bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer, thy sins are forgiven thee. And behold, certain of the scribes said within themselves, This man blasphemeth. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, so they weren't even speaking this, they were skeptical in their thoughts, really. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, Wherefore think ye evil in your hearts? For whether it is easier to say, thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, arise and walk. So now I'm going to pause there for a minute. So I just said both of those. So they were equally easy for me to say. Yeah, but Jesus is pointing to a bigger issue. But to be able to say that with authority, only one person can do that. So I can say thy sins be forgiven, but I can't forgive sins. Only God can, right? So that's what he's pointing to here. But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins. Arise, take up your bed, and go into thine house. And he arose and departed into his house. But when the multitude saw it, they marveled and glorified God, which had given such power unto men. But these other signs now, they're progressively building stronger and stronger linkages to, well, this isn't just any man, but they are getting drawn to him. And because he's now identifying himself as God in a very profound way. And that's how these signs are working. So in John, So in John 6, feeding of the 5,000, that was it's kind of at the center of this. So we're like halfway through the signs, and within the kind of the Hebrew thought life, they have these structures that they use where think of them as stair-step functions, concepts and ideas that build outward, and then they decline. But then each of the edges, if you will, they attach to each other. I mean, the only thing you have to take away from that is that it's significant, that it's more significant to the Jewish mind that that Jesus feeding the 5,000 is in the middle versus the first one, right? Because again, that was the one that was in all of the other Gospels. But also, when you think about Jesus in his use of these signs, he is also established in John what's called 7 I ams. And I'll go through them briefly. But when we're on on this feeding of 5,000 and the multiplying of bread, he says, I am the bread of life. With respect to the blind man that we'll read about in a second, I am the light of the world. John 10:7 says, I am the door. In fact, that might even be attached to the pool of Bethesda, because they were at the sheep gate. This pool was at the sheep gate. John 10:11 says, I am the good shepherd. John 11:25 says, I am the resurrection and the life. And that would be, probably speaking to or paralleling Lazarus being raised from the dead. John 15, he says, I am the true vine. And that might even hearken to the water to wine, the vineyard metaphors, the symbolism of all of that. But the one that really got him into trouble, if such a thing is possible, he said, before Abraham was, I am. And that parallels Exodus 3:14, or it fulfills 3:14, where God says, I am. Tell Pharaoh, I am sent you. So Jesus is like hearkening back to that, and he's saying, hey, that God in your scriptures, that's me. That really stirred things up, because they knew what he was saying. Let's go to the next sign. So we've been at the water to wine, the nobleman's son, the pool of Bethesda, Jesus feeding the 5,000, and also him being the bread of life, right? So these are paralleling identifications Jesus is making, both from the Old Testament. You think about manna, right? Manna from God, manna in the wilderness, the bread of life. Let's look at John 6:16 to 21. And when even was come, his disciples went down into the sea and entered into a ship and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. And when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea and drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. But he saith unto them, It is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land where they went. The day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none other boat there, save the one whereunto the disciples were entered, and that Jesus went not with his disciples into the boat, but that his disciples were gone away alone. Howbeit there came other boats from Tiberias nigh into the place where they did eat bread. After that the Lord had given thanks. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, neither his disciples, they also took shipping and came to Capernaum, seeking for Jesus. And when they had found him on the other side of the sea, they said unto him, Rabbi, when camest thou here? Jesus answered them and said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, you seek me not because you saw the miracles, but because you did eat of the loaves and were filled. Labor not, and this is probably the best message for us today, labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him hath God the Father sealed. Then they said unto him, What shall we do that we might work the works of God? Jesus answered and said unto him, This is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he hath sent. Then they said therefore unto him, What sign? Here it is. Here we revisit that concept of the signs. What sign showest thou then, that we may see and believe thee? What doest thou work? Our fathers did eat manna in the desert, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Then Jesus said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven, and giveth life unto the world. Then said they unto him, Lord, evermore give us this bread. And Jesus said unto them, I am, here's that I am statement, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. But I said unto you that you also have seen me, and believe not. So this goes back to, they're still looking for signs, but they're still not believing, or they're believing for the wrong reasons. They're hanging on for the food, maybe, the physical food. And he's continually saying, I can give you the physical food. I'll be your provider. I'll be Jehovah Jireh provider. But that's not the important part. The important part is that you identify with me as the bread of life, the true bread. And I was thinking about the communion elements before too, and I was thinking we have the symbol of wine as the blood of Christ and bread as the body of Christ, and it's like the bread has the substance, right? Like it's they both become a part of us when we take them as very powerful symbols. In fact, so powerful that we're told in the Bible, if we take them in an unworthy manner, for this reason many are sick or have died. I mean, that's how powerful those symbols are. But he's strongly wanting to be our provider in all areas. It's kind of I mean, you've probably heard this yourselves, or maybe you've gone to the Lord and something's fallen apart in your life, and it's like, well, now all I can do is pray, right? But that's what He wants us to do first, right? Not like exhaust natural means um, for adversities in life. He's often drawing our attention back to Himself through adversity, through trials, and He strengthens. I believe He strengthens our relationships through that. So this walking on the water, that was the fifth sign. Let's go to John chapter 9 for the next sign. This is the blind man healed. And again, think about, so this would be in John 9, 1 through 7. Think about Jesus as the light of the world. He's identified many times as the light of the world. And He also would come against like spiritual blindness, or He would come against, but He would also heal physical blindness. So John 9:1. And as Jesus passed by, He saw a man which was blind from his birth. And His disciples asked Him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. Now, I'm not, they weren't completely off base in their question. I mean, and Jesus didn't correct them on it. He just clarified, because what they were thinking about was the blessings and curses pronounced in Deuteronomy 28, or Exodus 20, 3 and 4 generations of bloodlines is how far curses can pass. And that's why they were asking about that. But in this case, it was a special case. And Jesus continues in verse 4, I work the works of Him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When He had thus spoken, He spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and He anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And He said unto him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore and washed, and came seeing. The neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen him that was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. But he said, I am he. It's pretty good corroboration, right? Eyewitness. Therefore said they unto him, How were thine eyes opened? He answered and said, A man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes, and said unto him, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. Then said they unto him, Where is he? He said, I know not. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. He's got a habit of doing these miracles on the Sabbath. He kind of is poking a little bit at the Pharisees. In fact, that was part of, I was looking at a concordance the other day about, so why mud and, taking something out of the ground? Well, apparently even making a mark or a cut in the ground. So you weren't supposed to be doing farming on the Sabbath, right? So it was like any breakage of the ground was considered farming, so, or in that category, and that you were technically breaking the Sabbath by doing that. So he's basically saying, okay, well, I'm going to, pull some ground out here, and yeah, I'm breaking your laws, but these aren't your laws aren't God's laws, right? I'm just paraphrasing that. They brought to the Pharisees him that was aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay upon my eyes, and I washed, and do see. Therefore saith some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them, rightfully so. They say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him that he hath opened thine eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they had called the parents of him that had received the sight. And they asked him, saying, Is this your son who say was born blind? How then doth he see? The parents answered them and said, We know not. We know that this is our son, but that he was born blind. But by what means he now seeth, we know not. Or who hath opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him. He shall speak for himself. So there's like an indication here too, where they want to sidestep involvement because if the Pharisees could really ostracize you from the community, and so they're kind of like just talk to him about it. We're gonna kind of avoid this. I'm gonna see if we can play this a second. I had a couple miracles that are relevant to. So these were a couple of the guys from Victory Outreach. One he got healed of blindness, and one of deafness.
I met the bishop here, and he healed my eyesight. I was blind, and now I could see. Well, I could see a lot better, that's for sure. He just helped me told me to raise my hands, and called the spirit of blindness out of me.
So I know you can't see this, but I was doing I do a midweek service really, and this guy had just come into the recovery home, and he was kind of sitting by himself, and after the service, one of the leaders, I asked one of the leaders about him, and he said, well, he's blind, and but the guys tell him that Jesus can heal blindness, and he's thinking maybe he'll heal him. So I had him come up, and he had, I guess I'm not around that many blind people, but I mean, it was like, like a Stevie Wonder look, but I didn't know if it was drugs or it could have been something else, I didn't know what it really was, but he couldn't see my eye, he couldn't focus on my face, he was like all over. But as we were praying, I had my eyes closed, but I felt like, I felt like opening them, and he's looking like straight at my eyes. And he said what he could see before was like if you look down a soda straw and you could see black or white, that's all he could see. But now he can see fine. And so it was his faith that Jesus still heals. Here's a guy. He was deaf in 1 year for 21 years.
You had a healing tonight. Your left ear started to get healed. Could you tell us what happened?
Yes, sir. I was hit with a bat in a fight, and back home where I'm from, and
I'm completely deaf. My eardrum's been ruptured for years. And as you were praying for me, I know you didn't realize I was deaf because we barely met. And you said, you snapped for healing. I heard crystal clear out of my ear. It almost startled me out of my prayer, my focus on my prayer. Because I haven't heard in my ear for so long. It's been so long.
How long?
I was 15. I'm 36 now. So it's been years since that side of my head's been deaf. So when you snapped and I heard it, it spooked me. And then you started whispering into my ear. I could hear your whispers.
Amen.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the
Now, the funny backstory about that was, so like a lot of times if I'm praying for people for healing, I'll snap my fingers and tap their shoulder. It's nothing mystic, but it's more of like a sign to me, like I'm standing on this as a now thing. Because I used to equivocate. I would pray for people and be like, I don't know, maybe they got healed, maybe they didn't, you know? But when I did that on his shoulder, so I wasn't even praying for his hearing. I didn't know he was deaf. He didn't say he was deaf. We were praying for his back. And God opens his ear. So, thank you, Lord. Let's see. So the bread of life. So let's go to, so blind man. The final one is Lazarus. Let's go to John 11. We'll start reading at verse 1. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sisters sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. So this is another instance where Jesus is calling out the real reason for an infirmity or for death. It's like, okay, it's not this person's sin, though it could be. It's not this person's generational sin, but it could be. But in these cases, it is so that God's power could be made manifest. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days until the same place where he was. So in other words, he's waiting for him to be dead for 3 days. So when we say, like, we'll hear later where Jesus wept, I think it was for their lack of faith, because he already knew Lazarus was going to die. He knew that 3 days early. So I think he was weeping for their lack of faith. But after that saith he to his disciples, let's go into Judea again. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walketh in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. These things saith he, and after that he saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go, that I may awake him out of his sleep. And his disciples, then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleepeth, he shall do well. Albeit Jesus spake of his death, but they thought he had spoken of taking a rest and sleep. But Jesus said unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent you may believe. Again, this is going back to that purpose of the signs, that they might believe, right? Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. So they're kind of being like, I don't know, too metaphorical, too loopy, right? Like they're still thinking like, this isn't going to be a resurrection. This is like, a spiritualization of death or whatever they were thinking. Then when Jesus came, he found that they had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it to thee. Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. And again, they're thinking about, in temporal terms. It's like, okay, yeah, I know he'll rise again. But Jesus is like, no, it's going to happen now. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection in the last day. And this is one of Jesus' I am statements that we covered earlier. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? She saith unto him, Yes, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. And when she said so, and when she had said so, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, The Master is come and calleth for thee. As soon as she had heard that, she rose quickly and came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but he was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then, which were with her in the house, and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth unto the grave to weep there. Okay, well, they got it wrong again, right? Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been there, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which cameth with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? And they said unto him, Lord, come and see. And I was just thinking, he probably wept because of their spiritual blindness and disbelief, lack of faith. They just didn't get it yet. Maybe they were still short one sign, but if this sign didn't get their attention, I don't think there's another more powerful sign that they could have. Because verse 35, Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone laid upon it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh. In the King James, stinketh. For he had been dead 4 days. Jesus saith unto her, Said I not unto thee that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldst see the glory of God? So they weren't believing. Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said, that they might believe that thou hast sent me. And when he thus had spoken, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, Loose him, and let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed on him. But some of them that went their ways to the Pharisees and told them that the things that Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, What do we? For this man doeth many miracles. So that might be, I would say that might be a distinction between a sign and a miracle. You know, a sign points to a reality beyond itself, whereas they're only seeing, a fact, a manifestation, but it doesn't mean anything to them, right? It's also of note that, if Jesus had said in verse 43, come forth, all the dead people would have come out, right? Like, if there was other dead people in the cave, they used to, have these like family burial areas. And I didn't plan on playing this, but let me see if I can find it real quick. There was I was praying for a guy in the recovery home who had he had scoliosis. And we were praying for him, and there was he had like this, I don't know, I felt like it was a spirit of scoliosis or a spirit of infirmity. The Bible refers to those. And this other guy that we weren't praying for got healed of the same thing. And this is his testimony.
I've had scoliosis since I was 15, and learned to live with the pain for a very long time. I'm 32 now, but when I was 19, I rear-ended a parked semi at 90 miles an hour and shattered my right femur bone. And they put two metal rods on my right side, which also threw off my hip because they left me about an inch and a half shorter. So I just learned to live with the pain for a very long time. And when Brother Bishop was really praying for healing for somebody else's scoliosis, he healed it kind of inadvertently healed my scoliosis. Like the pain went away, and my back just kind of straightened out by itself, and it popped several times. It's usually very hard to pop my back. I always have to struggle to pop it, but it feels good now. And when I stretch out my heels too, they're more level now than what they were before. So
They were about an inch and a half different before, right?
right, yeah.
And now they're even?
Now they're even when I was sitting on the couch and stretching, putting them on.
And no more pain?
Yeah, there's no more pain. It's gone.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Amen. So anyway, that's my closest experience to what could have happened in the cave. I theorize if Jesus had just said, come forth. What I wanted to close with is, and I asked Pastor Randy about this, if he was, if anyone needs prayer for healing, or this book of signs that we've been discussing, if it's signified something to you, and you want to just believe the Lord for, could be a physical healing, by the way, a miracle is an instant thing. A healing is more progressive. And I knew of a lady, she had spoken, her name is Sandra Martinez, and she and her husband have a ministry over by Detroit, the Detroit area, where they feed a lot of homeless people. Like, I think they have a meal every day for a lot of people. But her daughter was born severely mentally retarded. But she would pray for her every day for healing. And one night before her daughter went to bed, there was a prayer minister on TV, and he asked people that needed healing to stretch their hands toward toward the TV, and he would pray for them. And so she takes her daughter's hand and puts it on the TV screen, and they go to bed. And the next day, she's getting her daughter ready for school, and she's kind of like fussing, like, because she had these like Coke bottle glasses that she'd have to wear. And she said, "Mommy, I don't need those anymore. I can see fine." And she's like describing, the borders in her room, and she was healed after 12 years. And her daughter was with her when she spoke. They spoke as kind of a team down in San Antonio. And so, again, a healing. Don't ever give up on God for bringing forth healing. So again, sometimes it's instant, like many of the most of the miracles I played today. Sometimes it is progressive, but Pastor Randy had said he had some oil. Do you guys see oil anywhere? Oh, maybe that. So if anyone wants prayer, I'll do that now, and if not, we can close. Let's